Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Kia's Reviews. Today's review is full of spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home. So if you have not seen the movie yet, you have time to leave and come back once you have seen it. This is your spoiler warning. You have been warned. If I get any comments telling me that I haven't warned you, you've had your warning. This is the warning. Today's video is very different to what most of my reviews look like because I actually have a few special guests with me to discuss No Way Home in depth. I have with me Nick's Film Reviews.
Hello there.
Blue Blaze Studios.
Hey guys.
And Mateo with me.
Hi, sorry. I'm here.
Thank you all so much for coming on. We're actually going to get started on what we just generally thought of the movie itself before we kind of jump into spoiler territory. I got to say, I really loved No Way Home. I think after Homecoming and Far From Home, I think I was expecting kind of a mediocre along the same kind of line as that. I don't think I was expecting as much as we got. I had expectations, like I expected Toby and Andrew to arrive, but I think it went far beyond that, and we're going to discuss that. But I think it was a really well shot film. I thought the music was great. I thought the visual effects were insane, and I think the characters were really well built in this one. So yeah, I really enjoyed No Way Home. I think it was a 10 out of 10 for me. So what did you guys think of it?
I thought sure. Who's going first?
You go first.
Yeah, Addy, you go first.
I thought that it was going to be very weak story-wise, like when you look at the previous Spider-Man films. But I thought it'd be very fun. But it managed to be both very fun and also pretty well done story-wise. And I don't give a lot of films like very high ratings, but I thought this one was good, so it'd probably be a 9 from me.
That's good. Nick, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I really loved it as well. I feel like Jon Watts's Spider-Man movies have really improved as they've gone along. But I feel like No Way Home is like a big step up from Far From Home. I love that it's a much more mature Spider-Man movie. Like it's a lot more dark and so which is what I wanted because it's something I feel like Tom Holland's Peter Parker was missing. Like a really like dark, mature Spider-Man movie. And he actually does become his own Spider-Man, like no longer Spider-Man with an Iron Spider suit or all this technology. He's really himself. So I really love that a lot. And of course, Toby and Andrew, one of the saviors of the movie. And I gave it a 9.5 out of 10.
That's solid. And Mateo, what did you think of No Way Home, man?
Oh man, now I'm nervous because I get to be the boring one to say that I personally really loved the second like Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, like a lot.
Far From Home?
Yeah, probably like it's up there in terms of like MCU movies to me. And I haven't watched many movies this year. Like I've literally only watched like Shang-Chi, Black Widow, and the new Spider-Man movie. Like by far best MCU movie to come out recently. But to me, it's kind of like it was really good. Like for me, it was a 7 out of 10 film, not because of the fact that like it had so many expectations and it delivered upon each and every one of them. But there were like, for me personally, and I know this is like really a me thing in terms of like how the plot was constructed and what it ended up doing. I just ended up enjoying, especially comparing it to the plot of the second movie, which I'm not going to say that one was the perfect plot by any means, but I ended up having more enjoyment from that one out of the story from this new one. And there were just a bunch of like different moments that for me personally took me out of it. But at the same time, like really fun movie, bloody loved watching all the different interactions between all the different characters and all of that. Like it was a really fun romp through Tom Holland's Spider-Man and all the different Spider-Man universes as well. I really had a good time with it.
Oh, that's awesome. Because we all saw it together on the same day. We saw it this past Sunday, but when this comes out, it'll be the Sunday of opening weekend. So it was really awesome to see it in a packed cinema and to see everyone scream and cheer with just joy. It was just one of the best cinema experiences, if not the best for me. So we're going to get straight into this spoiler territory. So the opening scene is when Spider-Man's identity is being revealed. So it takes off where Far From Home left off. So it's immediately into basically part 2 of that scene. And we see that people are crowding Peter Parker as Spider-Man. People are questioning Zendaya. We actually have J. Jonah Jameson saying how already he's a Spider-Menace and how Mysterio has been put on this pedestal. And I got to say that I really liked that they really honed in on that kind of aspect for the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and how it was actually a one shot when you see Happy Hogan and Aunt May in their, their apartment, and you see the actual just shot. It's continuous until some point afterwards. I don't know exactly when it stopped, but I really liked how J. Jonah Jameson immediately set the tone of the movie. It was just like, no, Spider-Man's kind of the villain of his own movie, and Mysterio felt more like the hero. And that's just my opinion. So if you guys think any different, that's okay. But yeah, I just thought that having that kind of, what's it called when you feel like everything's coming like onto you? It's like what's it called? Pressure, yeah,
kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like everything's kind of coming in at you, and you feel very tight. You're in a tight space. So I don't remember the word for it. Like it's some kind of phobia or something of being in small spaces.
Oh yeah, claustrophobia.
Claustrophobia. Yeah, you feel claustrophobic because
I passed English.
Yeah, I haven't done English yet, so that's okay. I've got to pass. But yeah, so I feel like it felt very claustrophobic in terms of how much people were immediately judging Peter Parker for being a kid. And I thought that was incredible for the first 20 minutes. So what did you guys think of that kind of opening of the movie? So I think we'll just go yeah, Nick.
Okay. I love that it picks up not like immediately after. And I thought they did probably a good representation of what would actually happen if their identity got revealed. People are crowding, people are taking photos, helicopters are flying around. And I did notice that scene in the apartment was one shot. I was like, that's really smart because it's not like cut. It's actually like it's like a long shot that's almost kind of intense because, I love that they're like pulling the blinds down and stuff. There's helicopters surrounding the building. I thought they did a really good really good way of showing what would happen if something like this actually happened. It's all over the news. And yeah, I thought it was just a good, intense opening that continues the previous movie very, very well.
Yeah, and Addy, what did you think of the opening, man?
Well, I think something that we didn't see in the previous films was consequences for Spider-Man. Everything always works out for him. And in this film, they just kind of like took all the I forgot the word, all the criticisms from their fans and everything that he's not experiencing anything as a problem, which is a mainstay of the character. So they really just toned all of that in, and that's perfectly exemplified in the opening scene. And the fact that it lasts a solid 30-40 minutes in the runtime of the film allows you to get like a deeper understanding of how much of a problem it is. So I thought that was well done.
That's really good. Yeah, and Mateo, what did you like the opening?
Oh yeah, bloody loved it in terms of like what it did for setting up the story. Like again, big fan of the second movie, and like the whole gimmick of it was kind of that Mysterio always had the upper hand, and just kind of like paying the entire second movie off with the start of the third movie is like good continuity, good writing in terms of just making sure that like, yeah, there is consequences to everything that happens, and it's not like it expands the depths of like a villain in the MCU like further than most villains in the MCU get, by actually having like the consequences of the actions of the villain actually have repercussions that negatively impact the hero's life in like a really tangible way. I have the most random nitpick for the start though, which is I don't know why, but as soon as I saw like Spider-Man come in like swinging and like with the suit on, I don't know why, but it's one of the few times in the MCU where I could go like, damn, that was done with like special effects. It looked like faker than usual, and it was the most random nitpick. But the second my brain picked up on that, it took me out of the action a little bit, and it kind of like turned down stuff like, because the subway train swinging thing, an idea, like great idea, genius way to get him around. But as soon as like my brain noticed that the special effects were like slightly below the usual par, I was like, and maybe that's I think that's a Sony thing personally, because like that's probably the biggest issue I have with this movie is basically it's not a Marvel movie straight up. it is a Sony Marvel movie. So we're going to see a lot of the problems that Sony has with a lot of their movies in the Marvel one. But yeah, like I really love the opening. Very good cold opening into the movie. Well, quote unquote cold opening.
Yeah, I think the opening was incredible, actually. I really liked how it still kind of respected the tone of Homecoming and Far From Home, but then left the second half of the movie to have that kind of darker tone, especially once something big happens, which we'll talk about soon. But I also picked up on one other thing. There was a part where he came out of the subway and used that kind of what's the hatch that lets you into the sewers and like subways and stuff?
The manhole.
Yeah, whatever that is. He webbed it because that's and that's a nod to Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man 2 when he's using that to fight Rhino at the very end. So that was a little cool little Easter egg that I picked up on, and I don't know whether any of you did, but I thought that was pretty cool. So we're going to move on straight on to the next part of the movie that was probably the first biggest cheer in like the first 10 minutes or 12 minutes of the movie or whatever. And this was the reveal of Matt Murdock, Daredevil, who everyone was very excited to see at the start of the movie. I've binged Daredevil so many times because it's such a great show. It was cancelled actually after season 3 in 2018, but Marvel Studios, for all of the Marvel Netflix shows, got the rights back after 2 years of the shows being cancelled. So that's why they were able to still do No Way Home, but with Daredevil. So they still got Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Punisher, all these characters back. So they can technically do whatever the hell they want with these characters now. But it was good because, what's it called? He needed a lawyer. Spider-Man needed a lawyer because we had, Aunt May and Ned and MJ and Peter all being taken into custody for questioning about, well, why, what have you been doing as Spider-Man? Why did you, blow up the bridge that you did? I don't remember exactly which one it was, but yeah. And then we see Daredevil just suddenly out of nowhere be his lawyer and start giving him advice. Even though it's a cameo role, there's a really great moment where a rock is thrown, like a brick is thrown through Spider-Man's window and Daredevil catches it. But also you can see that Spider-Man's also gone to catch it as well because of his Spidey sense. And I think that's something that was really embraced a lot in this movie. And I think that Far From Home only began to explore that a lot more towards the end, the final battle in Far From Home against Mysterio. But I'm glad that this movie also is kind of picking up a lot more on Spidey sense. So I was quite happy with Daredevil's cameo and I was very excited by it. So yeah, I'm thrilled that Daredevil's in the MCU, even though he already was, and the Netflix shows are canon to the MCU events. I'm just glad that he's in a actual MCU movie. So hopefully we get some more from Charlie Cox and the Matt Murdock character. So what did you guys think of the Daredevil cameo and that kind of section of the movie?
I love the reveal. Like I'm glad that they didn't do a music built up kind of reveal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that it was like just one small scene because the movie already has a lot. And I feel like, it's great to see Charlie Cox back as Matt Murdock, but I like it just being a small cameo instead of him having a main role because there's many other projects that he could be a part of. And I love that the reveal is also just very casual. Like it's not, like I said, built up music. It's just you see that I'm just gonna say stick. You see that stick slam on the ground, and then we pan to him. And then I also, like you said, with the brick, it's a great way to just show people like, oh yeah, he's back. And also for the people who probably don't even know who Matt Murdock was and who didn't even know what was happening, just probably them seeing him catching the brick would probably make them think this dude's got powers. So it's great. It's great to see him back. I haven't seen the whole show about midway through the series, and I'm loving it. And I'm curious to see as to where they can take him because I'm assuming he won't get a movie, but I'm guessing he's probably going to be a part of the She-Hulk show.
Oh, why do you think the She-Hulk show?
Yeah, because She-Hulk's a lawyer, and there's rumors that he'll be in there. And it makes sense because the lawyer's in that. But I'm curious as to what other projects they could get him involved in.
And also I think another thing to consider also when giving your opinion on Daredevil's cameo, do you think that Disney will save Daredevil for season 4?
I remember hearing a rumor a while ago that they were going to do like, I don't know if the word is revival series, but like putting not the, I don't know if they'll do the Netflix show, but just make another, like, I think it'll be a revival, like putting a Daredevil show on Disney Plus. But I don't know I think they'd just do like a brand new season and not reflect on anything on the past 3 seasons, or maybe they will. But I'm hoping that is what they do, because I do want to see more of Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock.
No, that's good. So, Addy, what did you think of the whole Daredevil situation within No Way Home?
Yeah, I really liked it because I think Daredevil, like the show, was the first thing like that was MA that I ever saw, and I loved it because it was MA for the first part. But then afterwards, I realized that the show was just great. The whole premise, obviously, didn't originate in the show, but it was so well done, and the story development and everything. But just besides the show and the actual cameo itself, I think it was well done. Like what Nick said, I like that they didn't do a build up or anything. It was just kind of a pan to him. And it was like just hilarious to imagine the people who didn't know who Daredevil is just in the cinema, and then everyone else is just cheering. It's like, he's okay.
It's like, okay, that happened.
I thought it was really well done, and I'm pretty sure in the comics they do actually state that Daredevil's senses are faster than Spider-Man's, which is why he got the brick first.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. And Mateo, what did you think of Daredevil? Because I don't know whether have you seen the Netflix shows that Marvel produced?
I haven't.
Oh
yeah, I recognized Daredevil. Like as soon as I saw it, like they were going, "You need to lawyer up. You're gonna need to lawyer up," and then they cut to a lawyer with red glasses, and I'm like, "Oh, I wonder who this guy could be." And like, yeah, it made sense. Like they did build him up with the whole like, "You're gonna need a lawyer. You're gonna need to lawyer up" thing, like just beforehand, and everyone's like, "All right, it's gotta be him. It's gotta be him," and then they just straight up cut to him, and that was like really nice hype build up without like needing to do a whole like dramatical bit for it. But it was just very clever, like subtle build up. And again, I haven't watched the show, so I can't really get as hyped for like seeing Daredevil like basically in a main MCU movie, but I'm more excited because Daredevil is just a really cool hero. I really love like the concept of him and him as a character in the comics at least. So it's really nice to like see him get proper recognition up on stage in a movie. And again, just seeing him flex on Peter Parker like that, catching that brick, iconic. But yeah, like overall, it was just really fun to just see him there and seeing the Marvel go like, "Hey, by the way, we have this character. He exists."
Yeah, and why not use him?
Okay, let's not change the parameters of this spell anymore while I'm casting.
Okay, I'm done. I swear I'm done. Nah, but my Aunt May should really know.
You just stop talking to me.
Alrighty, so we're going to jump to the next part of the movie, the big part that everyone has seen in the trailers, Doctor Strange casting the spell. Now, this is something was quite straightforward. It made a lot of sense, but I think that the aftermath really confused me. I don't know whether it confused you guys, which is why I wanted to bring this up. And I know that I've seen it twice now, so it makes more sense. But when I first saw it, the spell was cast and it felt like nothing happened afterwards. And it just felt like life went on as usual. Flash was like calling him about MIT and everything felt normal in the world. It felt like the spell just didn't do anything until later on with the villains, obviously, when Doc Ock arrives, but we won't talk about Doc Ock just yet. But I think the whole, world after Doctor Strange's first spell, I thought that was a bit confusing. I don't know. Did you guys feel confused at all the first time, or was that just me?
You mean like if he cast a spell and there wasn't like any loud noise or like a moment he had where he's like, "Oh, something's wrong"?
Well, it wasn't even like that. I think that I just didn't see a change in any of the characters after the spell was cast. Because the whole thing about the movie, the whole motive of it was to get Peter Parker and Zendaya and MJ and Ned into MIT, and Flash got into MIT, obviously. But then straight after the spell, he calls Flash Thompson and goes, who do I go to get all three of us into MIT as well? And this is after the spell that he messed up and everything, and the multiverse opened and everything. So I was very confused as to why the world was still the same at that time, at that point. Like, I understand why now, because it welcomed the villains in. So anyone that knew Peter Parker was coming in. And then that was the 5 villains from Tobey's movies and Andrew's movies. But yeah, I just thought that the whole spell was a bit, I don't know. I thought that was a bit of a weak point for me, because I just didn't get why everyone was still the same after it. What do you guys think?
I get what you mean. Like,
Yeah,
when the spell was like done, we didn't get any sense of, we didn't
Something
get
had
have any
happened.
sense yet out of like, yeah, something's happened, and he didn't, like I said before, Doctor Strange didn't really be like, we've messed up, something doesn't feel right. Like later in the movie, he goes, I felt another presence, and I would prefer if you said that, like, at least just before Peter left, like, I feel that something's wrong, I'm gonna go check on something. But the spell's messed up, and they talk like normal. Then he goes on. Like, I agree with you. We don't really get a sense of that something's happened. And I know I'm maybe jump a bit ahead here, but the point of this, you know how a bit later on, he's like, the spell brought people in who know that Peter is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I picked this up afterwards. I don't think that Electro knew that Peter was Spider-Man.
I think he worked it out because, what did he? Amazing.
I don't think Max interacted with Peter, but he did Spider-Man. But even that, he could have just said, like, they started bringing in villains who have fought Spider-Man, or at least have.
Actually, that's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah, it's not a big nitpick, but it's just like.
It's just like,
I mean, you could have just said that. Yeah.
Yeah, Addy, what did you think of that whole kind of spell part of the movie?
Well, I feel like I do understand what you're saying. Either I'm missing something really obvious, or maybe it was just not well done. I feel like it was fine. I didn't think about it too much, because I was just thinking about if certain people were going to show up and stuff. But I feel like when they just say, "Oh, the spell messed up," they have a bit of leeway to just put random crap in there, basically. And I feel like that's kind of what they did. And it was both good and bad. I feel like the spell sequence was a bit weird at times, but I feel like I'm kind of glad they didn't spend too much time on it, because everyone just wanted to see the characters show up, and they were essentially just trying to find a way that they could get characters to show up, whether it really made sense or not. And I think that's essentially what it was.
Yeah, Mateo, do you have any thoughts on that either?
I mean, like, it's the biggest like plot point in the movie, like the whole Peter wants the spell, Strange messes up the spell because of Peter, and now everyone's coming in. Like, before I like move to like my main thought, just starting onto what Nick kind of said about Electro as well. Like, one of the like probably the funniest jokes in the movie is like at the very end, like, you know, after like he's talking to Andrew and they're like, "Man, I thought you was black." Like, after like taking off the mask, and like that was a really good joke. But then you think about it and like you realize, wait a minute, that means he didn't know who Spider-Man was.
Yeah.
So what's he doing here? Hey, wait a sec.
Yeah.
And it's like, obviously there's a certain other post-credit scene that like has that exact same like question mark attached to it. But overall, in terms of like how the spell worked, it's like, it's a very classic MCU thing of kind of like, here's an established story in the comics. Here's how we're going to put our twist on it. And here's what we kind of want to do with it. Like, there were always going to be kind of like quote unquote plot holes with it. And when I say quote unquote, I mean, yeah, no, just straight up plot holes, because they want to do the big cool collab movie. They can't find a proper way to do it except without the multiverse stuff. And again, like to quote Doctor Strange, the multiverse is something that we know frighteningly little about, or whatever the quote is.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Oh, so smart. But like the Marvel guys were going to find a way to like make it work, and if they have to kind of force it to happen, then they were going to do it, because like that was like the biggest pull of this film. The interactions, seeing all the characters like get together, one big jamboree. The fans have been asking for this for literal years now, because like as soon as the concept of a Spider-Verse came out, we were like, oh, well, wouldn't it be funny if we put them all three in one movie? And I feel like there's going to be some people who are willing to accept that for the sake of, again, seeing it all happen. And there's going to be some people who have issues with the plot holes. Like, again, like kind of the forcedness of it all. That's kind of why, in terms of like the story being lesser to the second movie. That was one of the reasons why it was really enjoyable seeing all the characters come together. But there is that kind of almost forced element to it that kind of just takes me out of it a bit. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing to say, because we're going to move on to the next huge part that it feels like we saw the whole scene for in the trailers itself, Doc Ock's arrival. And that was a huge part of the movie that everybody was looking forward to, and having Alfred Molina back. But we're also going to talk about Doc Ock and his battle with Peter Parker and everything, but also all of the villains that arrived. So there was another fight with Electro, Sandman, and Spider-Man. So it kind of felt like Spider-Man and Sandman against Electro, and then they all kind of made up for some reason. They all kind of understood that this isn't the Spider-Man that we were fought in the other universe. So kind of all the villains came in and they've all forgotten what they did before they died. They haven't died yet. They were just pulled in as they were doing their kind of villainous things. They haven't been killed. So they don't remember any of that. And they've been locked up by Doctor Strange in these cells. So Doctor Strange and Wong already had gotten the Lizard. And then Tom Holland's Spider-Man went after Electro and Sandman and Doc Ock, and then Green Goblin as well. So we've got all of that to unpack. I got to say, straight up, Doc Ock was an incredible arrival. Like that, I felt like, in comparison to how Daredevil's cameo came up, I think the introduction of Doc Ock was so much bigger, and it felt like it needed a build up to get excited about it. And I thought that was incredibly done. And then it ended up being one of the coolest fights of the movie. And I felt like I was very surprised that Green Goblin took such a different, kind of shift in character. He kind of just arrived at the battle and then it was gone. Like they immediately were in, Doc Ock was in the, what's called the cage and everything. And I was just like, I'm very confused as to why they kind of cut Green Goblin off. And then obviously we see Green Goblin at Feast with Aunt May. And and then there's so much more of the movie. I don't want to go through every single plot point of the movie, but these are the massive moments. So kind of this whole middle section just before Doctor Strange and Spider-Man have a go at each other, everything in that whole, half hour, we're going to just kind of condense into this little chat. So what did you guys think of Doc Ock and all the villains and everything like that?
I love his reveal, Doc Ock's reveal. And because it's that bridge scene, I love that even like when Spider-Man first went to the bridge, immediately I was jumping massive like, oh, this is it. This is the bridge. Doc Ock's about to show up. And one thing I'm curious about is how Doctor Strange knew how to just immediately put Peter and Doc Ock in the dungeon.
Yeah.
And if so, why did he? I'm curious. Like, did you just see it on the TV, then try to do it, and didn't get Goblin, or didn't know Goblin was there?
I think the Lizard came into the Sanctum Sanctorum, and they obviously ended up making the cages to keep him, contained. And also, I just want to shout out the visual effects team for that. What a redesign of Lizard! Like that was incredible. And the Amazing Spider-Man 1, it looked okay for the time. Like it looked decent, but this whole redesign of how he looks was so much better with updated visual effects and everything. And then I also just really quickly forgot to mention about Electro. When he was coming out of that pure energy, completely blue, like in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then those few notes of his theme. That was in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 as well, that kind of real rocky techno pop dubstep kind of thing. I was so excited. And then obviously he turned into Black Electro, so he got his body back. So I was really excited about all that. So yeah, I thought that was really well done. So yeah, sorry Nick, you continue.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, even they decided to do a small redesign for Lizard that immediately, I think it makes it look much better. Like the CGI in Amazing Spider-Man's good, but just the design of the Lizard is a bit basic. But they really made him look a bit more like a Lizard. I think that they made him actually a lot more scarier.
Mm.
And Electro's reveal, like you said, with his music, that was really really good. I love that. Just what do you say? Nod to Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I'm glad that they even with Sandman. Like I was curious, like, oh, are they trying to make him a villain now because of what happened to him at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 3? But I like what
You
they
mean
do
just
with him, how
Spider-Man
they
3?
actually. Oh, sorry, Spider-Man 3. I like what they do, how they keep him like when he first pops up, that they continue his arc, and then he's like, "Oh, I don't trust you," and yeah, like you said, the visual effects are really good. A big improvement up upon movies like a big improvement upon the last two, and so I thought they did a good job with the reveals of the villains. Well, except for Lizard, because I think they just didn't have time for that. And so like, oh, we'll just have him.
Or maybe it was just the budget, I think. I don't know. It's Sony. Addie, what did you think of all of the villains and Doc Ock arrival?
So like first, I'll go with Doc Ock. The arrival of Doc Ock, it was well done. Really, not much else to say about that. De-aging, that was really good. At first I was like, what? Why is he so mean? And then I was like, oh, okay, so it takes place a little before, and that made sense. And then he was quoting all the lines. It's just great to see all the villains back. Green Goblin, I liked how they did the entry with the pumpkin bomb. That was also a bit of a build up. And then what they did in the alley, that was cool too. And I think what they did with the Green Goblin in this film was so great, because in the first one, in the first Sam Raimi film, the Green Goblin, he's still well done, right? We still see it. But in this film, they make him like an old, he's essentially an old man who's like has multiple personalities. And yeah, he's confused essentially. And that's so like the scene at Feast, that's so good with the colors as well, where he's wearing the purple and green, the original colors of the Green Goblin. That was also like was a nice nod. Green Goblin, I think, was really well done. And he's actually a psychopath in this movie. Like he's not like, oh, I'm gonna kill you in this Sam Raimi way. And Sam Raimi's cool, but obviously.
You felt like there was a bigger threat?
Yeah, way more of a threat. He actually, like the stuff he does in this film, which I imagine we'll talk about later.
We will.
Like, yeah. And Electro, I liked how they made him not so goofy. I thought the blue was, I don't know. The blue was okay, I guess. I really wish though, I remember there was like one like frame in the No Way Home trailer where he had the whole mask thing made out of electricity. I wish they kept that, because that would have been so awesome to see him with that. I feel like the whole explanation that, oh, I have different energy here, that's why I'm less goofy, that was a bit whack. Like they should have given a bit more explanation to that. The Lizard was really underused, but to be fair, there's not really much you could have used him for. I was going to say we should have given him a lab coat, but I heard that like basically if they gave him a lab coat, they would have been like, it's a different lizard and whatnot. What other villains were there? Sandman. But you barely like it was barely Flint Marker. It was more Sandman than Flint Marker, which is fair enough because he essentially is all sand in this movie, and that's how they come at the end. But yeah, I thought the villains were generally good. And if they said that all the people who were brought in knew Peter Parker, didn't Eddie Brock from the original trilogy?
There was that shot at the very end of the movie where you saw all different, like the outline of very different like a lot of different villains. So you saw like, I think the outline of like Rhino or something. So I don't know. I really am confused as to whether it's possibly variants. If you've seen Loki, variants are beings that are from different universes but are the same kind of person, if you know what I mean. It's like Electro from Amazing Spider-Man 2, they might be another Electro from another world coming in, but that wasn't the situation. But I think that what's it called, you see those kind of villains come through like that. It just felt, I think there was some kind of plot holes with that kind of spell that brought everybody back. So not sure. And pardon? It's good.
Villains are good. Yeah.
Nice. Mateo, what did you think of all the villains and how they were kind of introduced?
In the trailer, I always felt like the shot with Doc Ock and the tentacles rising from like the road and all of that would look like a bloody boss intro from like literally any video game ever. And they nailed that kind of vibe in terms of the fact, like in the movie, it's literally the same scene, but because it's such a hypely constructed scene, you know, it's very hype. It's made to give you like real big amounts of hype, and then you get that hello Peter, and you're just like, there he is, and it's like it's exciting. It was a very exciting scene, but I feel like one of the biggest, again, this is a Sony movie, and Sony has the subtlety of a raging bull in a china shop. That is to say, none. Like a lot of like the bigger stuff that we were going to see in the movie, it was inevitably going to show up in the trailers. Again, I feel like the Doc Ock reveal would have been triply hype if you were seeing it for like the first time in the cinemas. And I feel like, again, it's a very Marvel trailer thing to do in terms of the fact that like this is the kind they will show you Doc Ock. They just wouldn't show you that particular scene. Like you'd know he was there. In terms of the actual Doc Ock himself, yeah, like they picked a really good place for them to fight as well. That's the other thing I was gonna say in terms of like he only really gets two major moments like where he's like doing any actual fighting, but they're both very good set pieces for him to fight. Because like on a bridge, he has like equal mobility to Spider-Man because you know Spider-Man can just like start flipping around and he can't like chase him down. But like on a bridge, it's pretty fair game. And then on a massive statue, then yeah, he also has pretty fair game with his tentacles. So very good. Like they knew what they wanted to do with him and they did it well. That's very well done. Gobby is probably like, he's the main villain of the movie. Like being real, it's not Spider-Man may be like the real villain in terms of like he's the one who made this all happen and has to clean up all this mess. But like, yeah, they went really far in terms of how bad they made him, and I love it because like that's the kind of like villain the Green Goblin kind of always is in the comics. He's always the one who like ruins things for Spider-Man, you know what I mean? He's the guy who killed Gwen Stacy. He's the guy who permanently messes up Spider-Man's life like in a million different ways. And having him like come back in that role, it's kind of like they like used him to his full potential. And especially with the whole split personalities angle, they really did do a good job of also making Norman a bit more sympathetic as well. So that they hit a really good balance in terms of presenting him as crazy and deranged, but also like actually a sympathetic villain at heart. And in terms of what you were saying before, Kieran, about like the when he was introduced, like I kind of get that it was almost a bit like anticlimactic to just like immediately teleport away as soon as like you introduce him. But I think that kind of like builds suspense, quote unquote, especially because like Tom Holland Spider-Man has never seen the Green Goblin before. So this random ass green guy in a metal suit just flew out of nowhere and tried to impale him on a metal like
I think he was called
skateboard.
like Tom Holland called him like an elf or something. He's like a
the
flying
green
elf. yeah.
So in that way, like of course we as the audience go like, oh my goodness, it's him. But like building up that kind of suspense within the movie itself, where it's like there's this massive threat that almost like takes out Peter on the first go if it hadn't been for some Doctor Strange timey-wimey magic. But like that kind of makes him already like he's going to be a big threat that's going to come back at some point in the movie, and Peter like is immediately now aware of that. I don't know, I think it was well done within the movie. It's just like for us as the audience, we're just kind of like, but we want to see him blow up stuff.
We want to see him kind of wreak chaos on New York City.
Basically, the other three villains I don't have that much to say on though. Like obviously Lizard and Sandman. Like again, as I just said, what the hell are you going to do with the Lizard? You know, it's the Lizard. He's done his thing. He's there as kind of like a comedic.
That's all he could do
almost. But yeah, like it's like the Lizard's there. Cool. Sandman again, like I don't know. I wasn't particularly disappointed with the way they used him, but they had that like very nice, like almost bit of continuity where like at the start he's like, I'm gonna help you because you're Peter, and then he's like, wait a minute, you're not Peter. I don't trust you. It's kind of like that very black and white level of like he's not the smartest tool in the shed. Like, he's not the smartest guy, and that kind of like black and white morality for him. It's simple, but it keeps him interesting as well because you never know like if he's gonna turn on Spider-Man or not. Even in like within like the lab scene where they're doing all the fixing and stuff, like you have your Doc Ock who like doesn't want to be there, but like you also have guys like he was the one that I thought was most likely to like start breaking shit as soon as shit went down. Because of like that very simple like I just want to get to see my daughter, man. I don't care. No, I was just gonna say I really liked Electro, like kind of like full stop. Like I know some people had problems with him suddenly becoming cool. I think it was great. I think it was funny. I think it made for the interactions to be a lot more cooler, and it kind of made for like because like he didn't really get much quote unquote plot progression. He's just kind of like the same Electro as ever. But at the end, it makes that like little interaction between him and Andrew like that much sweeter in terms of the fact that like oh, he's actually going to lose something from this, but it's also like he also gains an opportunity to start again. And like again, a lot of the setups in this movie is just to pay off the interactions. And when they pay off in like a nice little way like that, and it's also just Jamie Foxx being funny, like I think I can forgive it. I think I can forgive it.
Yeah, because I really loved leading up to Spider-Man. My brother and I played the PS4 Spider-Man game, the first one, and that had a lot of Aunt May and Feast. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe Feast is where Aunt May is spending all of her time. My brother's going, that's not going to happen. That's impossible. That's just part of the game. I don't know whether if you've ever read the comics, if Feast is in these Spider-Man comics, please let me know, because I genuinely do think they are, but I just haven't read them. Oh, they are? Oh yeah, cool. I was just like, I hope that's not just a video game thing. But it was nice to see that kind of be welcomed into the movie as well. And I think that really made the sting of Green Goblin's kind of transformation, which we will talk about soon, so much more evil. So I liked that. And the next thing what happens is after just finding out that after Tom Holland basically found out that all the villains would die if they went back to their universes, which isn't particularly true. It could be putting them somewhere else, who knows. But Spider-Man decides, you know what, I think I know better. I'm just going to make this so much harder for the movie and make this kind of a plot convenient point, and takes the box that kind of is containing them and will send them back to their world and stop kind of this multiverse. He takes it, and then Doctor Strange and Spider-Man fight in the mirror dimension. And I have to say, I don't know whether you guys agree, and there's a lot of great fight scenes in Spider-Man films, but I think this was visually probably one of the best fights that Spider-Man's ever had. I thought the Electro fight in Times Square looked really, really good. But I really loved the mirror dimension fight. And I think the visuals were so cool. It really came from the Doctor Strange movie, came from Infinity War as well. So it felt like Doctor Strange's powers within the mirror dimension really were pronounced a lot more in this. And they're a lot more understandable because they've done it so many times in the MCU movies. I really liked that. So Nick, what did you think of the Doctor Strange versus Spider-Man? Because a lot of people were theorizing beforehand that he was like some kind of variant Doctor Strange, and ends up just being Doctor Strange.
I didn't even know people were thinking that. It was completely not. It was definitely not that. But I thought it was a. It looks great. But we've seen it before with Doctor Strange. But I guess really putting someone like Spider-Man, like just a normal person who doesn't have those kinds of powers, into that like mirror dimension, that was really good to watch. And I really like how Spider-Man actually kind of wins the fight. Mm-hmm. But him like using math, like I'm not that great at math, but
yeah, the geometry part, I thought that was so cool.
It's cool, but I don't understand how it works. But I'm guessing it probably does. It does make sense, but I'm not good at math.
Yeah,
but I thought that was a very Peter Parker way to like just to really bring out his nerdiness. And I guess I really actually do like how it ends in that Doctor Strange doesn't have a big role throughout the movie, because it's like I was worried that Doctor Strange would have too much of a role and really be like his mentor, like what Iron Man and Nick Fury were kind of before. But I'm glad that there's a big gap where he's not in it, because I'm like, good, this is what I want to see. And then he comes in the final battle and it makes sense.
Yeah, because I think what I really liked about that whole geometry thing, I actually forgot about that. So thank you for reminding me. I think that having that geometry thing really kind of solidified Peter Parker's knowledge, and that he's still an incredibly smart person, and he has to use that kind of scientific mind every single day as Spider-Man. But I think that really differentiated the Spider-Man he was in this movie, a very mature version of his character, compared to Infinity War, when he was fighting Thanos and he's like, oh, it's magic with a kick and magic with a blah, blah, blah. And then it felt like he was very immature in Infinity War, but ever since Endgame, he's kind of grown up so well because he's had to face the threats of Mysterio and all these villains now. So yeah, I thought that was a really good kind of nod to how he's grown. So yeah, so Addy, what did you think of the Doctor Strange versus Spider-Man fight?
Yeah, I thought it was a good fight. It kind of felt like they were like doing stuff from like Inception and also the Doctor Strange movie. It kind of like mixed everything into each other. It did look pretty good. The VFX, it was like the VFX were quite good. I liked to say what Nick said essentially. I'm glad that they didn't make Doctor Strange like replacement for Iron Man. They definitely took all the criticisms and just made Spider-Man his own thing, which was good. The fight itself, as I said, well done. That's really all I have to say.
That's good. So yeah, Mateo, what did you? I don't know whether what you would think going on from Doctor Strange and Infinity War. What you thought of this kind of mirror dimension fight?
The fight itself was great. Like, I don't have any problems with like the way it was set up. Like, especially with like what I said with the Doc Ock fight, where like a big part of fight scenes is where you do them. You want to put it in a place that makes sure that like it's entertaining to watch, because you can have both characters or however many people are fighting just going at it with like a slew of different abilities available to their disposal on that kind of equal ground. Even though like a mirror dimension fight is obviously like stacked in Doctor Strange's favor, the fact that the mirror dimension is just this trippy, big ass geometrical wonderland, as Spider-Man himself points out, gives him a lot of opportunities to like move around and do some cool tricks, like the geometry trick, which was a really clever resolution in terms of the fact that, yeah, Doctor Strange may be like the master of magic, but Peter Parker is a science nerd. And it's like winning fights with that mix of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. It's kind of like that very relatable aspect of the Spider-Man as a hero character, where it's like Spider-Man isn't just Spider-Man, he's also Peter Parker. Like human, like it's not just humanizing him outside of the hero stuff, it's humanizing him inside of the hero stuff. And it's very interesting. And that kind of dichotomy that you guys already mentioned as well, I hadn't really thought about that, but now that I think about it, taking that mentor character idea and kind of like rejecting it, like I think that now that you pointed out, it's very clever, because like again, yeah, Strange could have become another mentor figure, but he has that very similar actually kind of attitude to Tony Stark, in terms of the fact that it's like both of them scold Peter for like doing what they believe to be the wrong thing, but seeing Peter kind of like take a stand for himself is pretty interesting in terms of the way he does it. It's just a bit, for me personally, I was kind of like taken aback by Doctor Strange's character, just because like he's been very different in every single movie he's been in. So kind of seeing him, he's not exactly like sarcastic in this one, but he's almost like very, again, egotistical kind of thing, almost like very much like at the start of the first movie. It's this very strange blend of like, he still believes he's always correct, versus he also has like infinite responsibility for all the magical power and stuff that he causes. So his character isn't like, in terms of like the actual story itself, like it was a bit of like a weird plot change. I was down for it, because like they managed to justify it almost in terms of like the scenario surrounding it. Like he's kind of terrified about the fact that there is a massive existential threat coming to the universe, but it's also like, I just kind of wish, especially in this new movie that's coming out, I hope they find a way to like settle on his character, because like we go from, he starts off very sarcastic and narcissistic in the Doctor Strange movie, and then he becomes more humble. And then we have him in Infinity War and Endgame, where he's like, he doesn't have much of a time to be snarky, but he's very, very serious. And now he's back to, is like, who is Doctor Strange? And I hope that is a question that we can get more answered in the next Doctor Strange movie. But yeah,
that's good, because as you and Nick mentioned, having, what really kind of pulls me out of Homecoming and Far From Home is the fact that he has Tony Stark as a mentor, then he has Nick Fury as a mentor, and then he had Mysterio as a mentor. And I just felt like, can you not just let him be Spider-Man? Like, that's what I love about Andrew Garfield, and that's what I love about Tobey Maguire, is that they're their own like Spider-Man. It doesn't feel like what's it called, they needed coaching. They just went, well, this is the powers I've got, I need to do what I think is right and what I think will do. But we'll elaborate on that towards the end of the movie, because I feel like that's kind of the moment where we can talk about that a lot more. But I think Peter's overconfidence with releasing the villains, he gets to work with them, and it's great. It's fantastic. It's an awesome sequence of Green Goblin and Peter Parker just nerding out together as scientists because they're something of a scientist themselves. So yeah, sorry, I had to do it. I know it's cringy, but I don't care. The disappointment in Addie's eyes. I'm so sorry, dude. But yeah, so seeing them all kind of work together to get Doc Ock cured, because at this point, Peter Parker just wants to cure the villains because he doesn't think they're villains. He thinks that they're just men that, you know, have come from this multiverse and were treated unfairly by Andrew and Toby, and he doesn't think that that's fair. So he cures Doc Ock, which is fantastic, and they do this in Happy's apartment, where there's the the suit maker and all this different scientific equipment that we saw in the jet in Far From Home, which I thought was really cool to have moved into an apartment. But then Goblin really does a turnaround. You finally get Spidey sense, and this is why this is probably one of the best scenes of the movie, because you didn't know who was the villain in that scene. You didn't know who was going to turn. And it was prolonged enough to be like, I don't know. I genuinely don't know who's going to turn on him. And then when Spider-Man just randomly, you know, shot his web at one of them, and then you realized it was Goblin, it's like that kind of sheltered, you know, what's his name? Norman Osborn, and his confusion over what he's done when he becomes Goblin. He's Goblin now. And he's going to be evil, and he's going to be like that for the rest of the movie. And that's what I loved. That kind of sparked Electro as well. He wanted more power, so he stole the arc reactor from the science technology or whatever Happy had in his apartment. And then the biggest, arguably what turns the movie on its back, or whatever the quote is, whatever it is that the analogy is, it makes the film a lot different than the first half. And it's not as bright. It's not as Far From Home, Homecoming. It's enough to be like, okay, we've had that first half. It's still part of Tom's trilogy, and it's very bright and, you know, MCU-like. But I liked that Marvel finally listened to fans like Nick and and I don't know whether it's the same for Addie and Mateo, but I really wanted Marvel to go that extra step further. I wanted them to go to a darker, more violent place. And I think that that's where Sony kind of jump out and go, oh no, we don't want that, because we want to keep this movie kind of for 13-year-olds, like Venom not being MA15 plus, or possibly even Blade. And I think that this proved that a movie can be dark in the MCU, but still be really good and still get a big audience to go to see it. So I think that this whole scene of Green Goblin killing Aunt May, I thought that's what really turned the film completely around. And I think that it was a very emotional scene, and it didn't feel like any of the other scenes where Tom Holland cries, like when Tony Stark dies or when he's about to die. It doesn't feel like that. It felt more like he actually cares about Aunt May, and it's not just like, oh, Mr. Stark, no, I'm not feeling so great. It actually felt like, you know, keep your eyes open, May, was what he was saying. And he's like, stay with me. And I felt more emotionally moved in that scene than scenes in Infinity War or Endgame. And I think that that really kind of showed the villainy in Green Goblin and how amazing Willem Dafoe's performance was in this film. So I think that that scene was incredible. And then obviously that scene ends off with great power comes great responsibility. They didn't say it exactly like that, which was nice. I like that they had a different variation of it from May. So it felt like she was recalling what Uncle Ben had said to Peter, obviously, years ago. But yeah, I thought that was a big turning point in the movie. So Nick, what did you think of that kind of Goblin transformation, and the death of Aunt May?
Well, with Goblin, I love. Okay, when at first I was a little upset that they wouldn't really go on the Green Goblin like mask in that, but then I really what I love about him not having the mask now is that it really shows Willem Dafoe's acting, and I think he was so good. His evil faces and that, and especially when with that incredible fight scene where he fights Spider-Man. I love that they really touch on, like you said before, I love that they touch on the Spidey sense more. And just that scene where he's like, something's wrong. I was like, who is that? But then he does Goblin, and really, the death of Aunt May is just a big step up in Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies, and I think it is what the franchise needed, because I don't think anyone in Tom's trilogy before Aunt May died. I guess Tony doesn't really count because that's Endgame, but I think Tom really showed his acting then. This is his peak.
Consequence.
This is like and also like it's the best performance he's done. Just with that scene as an example, why it's his best performance, but I think that really carried the movie, and I love how it doesn't just transition to like, okay, yeah, let's like just have Peter go on normally. Like it really affects his behavior and his motivation for the rest of the movie, and they did a really good job of that. So
yeah, I agree.
I liked it.
Addy, what did you kind of think of that? Because as you were saying before, you really felt that No Way Home had more consequences than any other Spider-Man movie, kind of in at least the MCU. But I thought that this would kind of be that kind of scene that supported your claim. So yeah, what did you think of Green Goblin and Aunt May's death?
So everyone's always like, we never really got an origin story for this, Peter, and now everything is clear. No Way Home is the origin story to a certain extent. They've taken the original premise, which we've seen twice, which already feels like too many times, but we've seen it twice with almost no differences in between, except that Amazing Spider-Man was a little more gritty. And then they just essentially turned it on its head. Aunt May is Uncle Ben now. Essentially, that sounds wrong. But Aunt May's
I know what you're trying to say, yeah, because Uncle Ben wasn't in there, but it felt like Aunt May was that kind of character for Tom, whereas Uncle Ben was that character for Andrew and Toby. Yeah.
So everyone was like, "Oh no, don't tell me Iron Man is the Uncle Ben." It's like, no, Aunt May's the Uncle Ben. Still sounds wrong. But
Of the series, of the MCU. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
And
yeah.
The thing about her death is it's arguably more impactful than any Uncle Ben death, because besides the fact that Uncle Ben, well, we like him so much. There's nothing like you don't like about him, especially in the original
against him.
trilogy. Like,
yeah.
But then again, we only see him for like 10 minutes or so, right? In this franchise, we see her for 3 films, and everyone's like, nah, they're gonna kill off Ned, they're gonna kill off MJ, and then they kill off Aunt May. And I didn't expect that personally. And other people's reviews that I heard, they didn't expect it either. So when they kill her off, it's way more impactful. And as you said, the consequences are like, it's one of the worst consequences, right? So they what's the opposite of doubling down? They triple up. They triple up on everything they didn't have.
It sounds like a Mario reference. Triple up.
Yeah, they get the coins. They go through the tunnel, and then Luigi shows up. And that was my favorite part of the film. Yeah. But the Aunt May death scenes, it's very well done. And I saw this in like a breakdown. I don't know if this is too much, but like in the feast scene when she's talking with Norman Osborn, she has like a red sash where she actually gets like where all the blood is when she dies.
Oh, really?
It might be too much. It might be a bit of a stretch, but I think that's like, if that's cool. Then MCU's on another level. Yeah. But we already know that Jon Watts, he likes to put details and Easter eggs in the car things. So I wouldn't put it past him. But I think the death scene's well done, and the impact is crazy high. And Tom Holland's, I've always seen Tom Holland as a good actor. Of the 3 Spider-Men, based on pure acting skills, I think Andrew Garfield is the best actor. But Tom Holland shows that he should be a Spider-Man. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think before we quickly go on to Mateo's, I just wanted to mention after what's it called, Aunt May's death, I thought the shot, there was Nick and I were talking about this actually last night. There's a shot where J. Jonah Jameson immediately blames Peter Parker for Aunt May's death, and you can see Spider-Man just in the rain, just like shocked at what had just happened and shocked that he's lost basically the only person in his life that he cared about as real family, if that makes any sense. And he looks up, and it's a beautiful shot of just J. Jonah Jameson in this huge billboard, basically berating Spider-Man for what he's done. And then
I love the way they pan out.
Yeah, it was
the
just
way he pans out is gorgeous.
It was just beautiful, that shot. And also, there was something you mentioned, Addie, that I was going to expand upon, but I don't remember. All right, well, I'll let Mateo, what did you think of Green Goblin's kind of transformation from Norman to Gobby? And then what did you think of Aunt May's death?
I did say like before that I really liked the way they wrote Green Goblin, seeing him go from Willem de Friend to Willem Dafoe all over again and have to fight Spider-Man from nowhere. That was like, I knew it was gonna happen. I feel like we all knew it was gonna happen. Like he's there, he has his big old silver glider. He's gonna get over there and he's gonna cause some trouble. You just don't know when. And like seeing it happen, like obviously it wasn't shocking that it happened in and of itself, but it was more shocking to see just how deftly all, I guess, 4 villains, because like Doc Ock like runs away pretty quickly, but how all 4 villains immediately just whoop Spider-Man's butt so thoroughly. Because it's very, like, obviously it's your classic like hero's journey. The hero needs to be beaten down before he can get back up. But like, I didn't particularly think that the movie itself was dark, but it was definitely a moment of like major weakness for Peter, just in terms of the fact that like he couldn't even like hold a candle to how hard he was being like whooped by these guys. And these were guys that he would like try and help as well. Like it was a full-on betrayal of sorts. And again, going back to that whole idea, because like I think one of the biggest critiques against Tom Holland's Spider-Man is that his actions don't have consequences at times. And like one of the biggest praises for this movie is that his actions have consequences. I personally, actions having consequences was like one of the biggest reasons why I like the second movie, mostly because like every action or every lack of action or action that Peter takes drives him away from Peter Parker and closer to Spider-Man, and he ends up in a really uncomfortable position where he gives up the glasses to Mysterio, not just because he feels he has to, like, you know, he feels like Mysterio would do better with them, but also it's kind of like, again, what he almost does when he presses the cube and says, I'm sending them back to your world, they're your problem now. Like he, like that whole moment, that whole idea of power and responsibility, like I think it was very nicely introduced like in both of the first 2 films. But then seeing Peter with all his power, after trying to use that responsibly, failing and getting his butt handed to him, like having physical literal consequences instead of just the implied consequences, whereas like Mysterio could blow up the world, whereas no, here he just gets absolutely beaten up and Aunt May dies. Yeah, that's dark compared to everything that's happened beforehand. In terms of Aunt May's death, like I don't know, maybe I'm just like not really affected by like deaths like that in movies. To me, it was like if I had like a Spider-Man No Way Home bingo sheet, someone dying would have probably been like near the middle. You know what I mean? I feel like it was almost accounted as a free spot. And especially when Aunt May started talking about like it's the right thing to do, I was in my head, I was like,
she's gonna die. She's dead.
That's a death flag. No. And again, like at the pain of repeating myself, but the whole idea that the MCU just takes stuff from the comics and puts its own spin on it, having Aunt May give the power responsibility speech, like to me, it wasn't like a big mind-blowing moment, but it also made sense, especially within the consequences of like what was happening just now. Like after everything Peter's gone through, he's like the whole wanting to be Peter Parker versus the responsibilities of Spider-Man thing has always been the entire main drive throughout the first 2 movies. Like, you know, I want to stop the Vulture, but I also want to have a social life. I want to enjoy like my time in Europe, and also, you know, get with Zendaya, an admirable goal. But I also kind of have to also kind of not let the universe fall out of whack. I want to help all of these bad people, but I also kind of just want to get on with my life, especially because the last time I tried to take responsibility for my actions, my entire identity got revealed to the whole world, and now my life is way worse than it was. Like having it all culminate with Aunt May like doing that, like the power versus responsibility speech, it was, I think that was very clever, and especially because it gives you the setup to go into, again, like Peter Parker, like where does he go now? Like obviously, like great power, responsibility, like it's been slapped in his face. but the responsibility and power and all of that has just led to Aunt May's death. Like, you can't keep on doing the superhero thing and not expect to take a couple of consequences in stride. So like, ultimately, I think it was a very good culmination of a lot of stuff that just happening like throughout the past couple of movies. And it's a very delayed payoff, and it's a very subtle-ish payoff. But I think it's the directors just kind of going, not only did we listen to you guys' complaints, we took what we already had and just merged it all together to like present something that we hope is nice.
Yeah, and I think hearing it from that, I thought that was a really good point to make, and I think that was a very good constant between Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home. It doesn't feel like No Way Home is just its own thing, even though it might be, you know, personally for me, way better in quality than Far From Home and Homecoming. But it kind of makes it feel more like that's why they're calling this the first trilogy for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and then there'll be a second trilogy, because these kind of feel like that constant message is there. But I remember what I was going to say when Addie was talking. What really confused me was Aunt May dying or not? Because she got impaled by that glider, and then suddenly she got up like, oh yeah, I'm fine, kind of thing, and I'm gonna be all right. I just got injured basically, and that kind of really confused me. I'm like, is she dead? Because she got whacked by that she got taken down by that glider, and then when she got up and then suddenly started like slipping, I was like, maybe that's just like a really, really convincing performance that she's really injured or she's dead. And then obviously she falls down and then, yeah, she's dead. So it just took me a while to kind of grasp onto that. Is she dead? Is she not dead kind of thing? So, but I think this is what Mateo's put his hand up. Yes, Mateo.
Yeah, thanks. Just the one quick thing that like I wanted to add on to that though.
Yeah, of course.
Because like I was gonna mention it, I forgot, and now you've reminded me about the whole like fake out, like quote unquote fake out death. Because like, yeah, like you see her get bloody rammed, and then like, no, I'm fine, and then she's not. It almost feels like a bit of like, I'm gonna lower my hand first.
There we go.
It's like the Marvel guys themselves acknowledging the fact that they're subverting expectations, because it's like, it's a pretty classic MCU thing to kind of like, yeah, big injury happens, but like, you know, we can fix this. Like there can be a way to spin this, like, especially with the very hurtful tone of the entire like first half of the movie, where it's like, we're gonna fix all of this, and then suddenly it's like, no, you can't really fix everything you want to fix, can you? Like to quote Willem Dafoe, you're trying to have everything you want, and well, the whole world makes you choose, and like, you know, eventually something's got to give. In this case, it was Aunt May, unfortunately.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. But what I think made me really appreciate Spider-Man No Way Home out of any scene in the whole movie is the contrast in tone. And I think that the tone of Aunt May's death compared to what comes really quickly next, because I'll admit I cried heaps during Aunt May's death. I was very upset by it, and I was very emotionally moved by it. But then suddenly I realized I was wiping my tears away because I was expecting probably the best two reveals of the movie. And then I was suddenly so happy within like a span of 2 minutes. I was crying, and then 2 minutes later, I'm cheering my ass off because Andrew Garfield is in the movie, and finally. And I think that it was a really smart way of how they did it. I know it was a bit of a joke how Ned can, you know, do the Doctor Strange thing with the ring after the fight with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. But I think the way that they did Andrew's reveal was amazing. Oh, I didn't even realize that that's what I said. So I think that they gave you enough time as a fan to be like, is that, because he's like, oh yeah, we want to see Peter. And I'm like, okay, is that Tom Holland, like after he's been crying as he put his mask on? And I couldn't see because it was so distinct. And then I'm like, those eyes look like they're bigger, but I didn't want to jump to the conclusion that it was Andrew Garfield until he jumped through that portal and ran at us and then pulls off his mask. And then I was like, oh, it's Andrew Garfield, holy moly. I was so excited. And I think that was probably my favorite moment of the movie, was when Andrew arrived and had that kind of 5 minutes to himself for fans to enjoy that he's there. and that they've really put Andrew Garfield into this movie, not just as a cameo like Daredevil, but as like a full-blown character for the last hour of the movie. So it was nice to see him get a couple of, sequences. And then obviously Toby arrives. And I know that a lot of people went to the movie to go see Toby, but I think I personally went to go see Andrew. So I think that's why I think Andrew was more exciting of a reveal than Toby. And then obviously we see Toby before he gets into the fight and before Tom Holland, they go to find Tom Holland. Obviously he has his suit, and there was a really good joke, I think it was Andrew. It was either Andrew or Ned asking him, he's like, oh, are you really going to fight in those youth pastor clothes? And I thought that was hilarious. So yeah, I was really pleased with how they did Andrew's arrival and Toby's arrival, especially after such a harrowing moment with Aunt May's death. So yeah, what did you think, Nick? Who did you prefer out of Andrew's arrival and Toby's arrival?
Well, as a Spider-Man, I prefer Toby, but I really love how they do Andrew's reveal, because when that portal first opened, I actually thought it was Tom.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he started doing stuff like raising his hand and moving a bit quirky, I was like, hang on, Tom's sad. And then as he began to walk closer to the portal, I realized, wait, this dude's tall. And then I love how in the theater we weren't cheering yet, but we were like, oh. And the moment he jumps through the portal,
we
incredibly
screamed.
Loud cheers from all of us. And I
we
love
all
that
screamed.
And it was even I was just, he doesn't have the best movies, but I was still incredibly happy just to see him, because even in that moment I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna get Toby now. But I love that they even have small pauses, and just having that Ned's I don't know, I'm assuming it's his grandmother or something, starts screaming, because I'm like, they didn't want this in the movie. I'm assuming they put it there because they knew that when he comes up on the screen, people are gonna cheer. And then he takes the mask off, and it's a louder cheer. And I think they handled it really, really well. And then Toby comes through, and it's just beautiful. I'm so happy to see them back, and just wow, the leaks that were real, and it was just an incredibly happy moment for Spider-Man fans.
Yeah, and I think in comparison to how the reveals were for Endgame, when everyone came back at the very end for the final fight, as much as that's the high point for Endgame, maybe even Captain America getting Thor's hammer, I think was my personal favorite scene in the movie. I think that No Way Home did that, but better. For some, I don't know why. I get it was the same thing with the portal, but I think that the build up, instead of just hearing Falcon go, oh yeah, Cap on your left or something, he said, and then it's just then we knew everybody was coming back. But seeing Andrew, and you had to think for a second, wait a second, is that really Andrew or is that Tom? And then suddenly that kind of big reveal. I thought that's why I liked that a lot better than Endgame. So yeah, Addy, what did you think of Andrew's arrival or Toby's arrival? Who did you prefer? Who were you looking forward to and the most? And who do you think arrived the best?
I was pretty sure that Andrew was going to show up, because all those interviews, it's pretty obvious.
You knew.
It's pretty evident. All of the leaks. By the way, the one with him doing this thing, with the bar, and then
we even cheered at that.
Yeah,
that was hilarious.
Who knew that holding onto a pole would be the most hype thing ever?
Yeah.
And then all those people who are on YouTube is I photoshopped. I was like, shut up, no, you didn't. And that was so satisfying to see.
I ain't the wolf or something, or whatever he said.
Yeah, I was looking forward to seeing Toby, because I didn't know if he would show up, because I heard that both Andrew and Toby actually kind of ended on bad terms with the movies, and the general theme was Spider-Man was my dream and they took it away from me. And now seeing them back, it's such a good feeling. It's like a happy ending that's come a couple of years late, but it's good to see. I was hyped to see Toby, but Andrew was he was so good in this movie. Low key, he was a little better than the other two Spider-Man. They were fun to see.
I agree.
But he was he
stole the show.
Did everything. Yeah, he stole the show. He did everything so well. I'm just shocked that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are basically able to go back into characters they hadn't played for years so well. Andrew, like Nick said, he was very quirky. He was making all the actions, hello, take off the mask, all of that, do the jumping thing, his facial reactions to MJ throwing the bread. That was so funny.
Oh, that was good. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when Toby shows up, he nails Toby. Toby Maguire is able to play Toby Maguire's Spider-Man so well. He's got that charming smile. He's like, hello, he's so polite and stuff. And he's not wearing the drip, but then you see the drip later, and it's so satisfying.
And then that gets you excited as well.
It was purposeful, but and the scene where they both like flip at each other because they both have the Spidey sense. They both know preemptively that they're both gonna do it. It's like such a mind stuff. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so great to see both of them back. Because I just had I had this nightmare that just, what if we go to the movie, we're all hyped, and then just
it was all
they
fake.
don't show up.
Yeah.
I'd be like, what the frick did I just spend money for?
Yeah.
And the good thing was I didn't spend money either way. Thanks, Kieran.
Thank you. No worries. I'm happy to get you free screenings. I'll just have more birthdays off and then.
It was good to see him.
That's good. So Mateo, I'm going to take a wild guess here. I'm going to think that you were more excited for Toby than Andrew. Am I right in that prediction?
I was equally excited for both, actually.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. How dare you assume I have favorites? I'm a good parent. But honestly, at that point, as soon as we saw all the villains come through, I was like, yeah, we're going to see him at some point, but I'm very excited to see when. The thing is, though, I feel like this is a thing that you're either going to love or hate about this movie. Personally, I liked it, but the fact that the sequencing of it, we go from Aunt May's death to the Peter in front of that billboard. I didn't talk about it before, but you already mentioned it, Kieran. That was probably the hardest hitting scene in the entire movie for me. That was the scene that I liked the most, because it was it's very rare for me to see a protagonist get directly called out for the consequences of their actions
immediately
in a clever way. Yeah, exactly. But at that point, it's where you realize that every single action that Parker has taken up until that point has had a consequence. And even especially contrasting it with the start where we have everyone knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man now, goofy scene throughout the entire New York City, where it's it's very claustrophobic, but it's also played as more lighthearted. Here it's the full impact of that is on display, and especially with someone like J. Jonah, every single thing you do is now a blight on this world. And yet going directly from that to immediately Ned and MJ and to Spider-Man, you're either gonna love that because it gets you right out of that very low point very quickly, or you're gonna feel like it really breaks the action, the
emotional,
because it's you go from the emotional high of the movie to the hype high of the movie, which is I personally really liked it, especially because what are they going to do to top such a serious scene? That's the answer. They're gonna bring in the big guns, that's your hype high point. And personally as well, not so much as as Spider-Man, but I'm a big fan of Andrew Garfield as an actor, so getting to see him goof around and be almost a typical Andrew Garfield character, but also it's Andrew Garfield being Spider-Man. It's entertaining. I'm really glad that they gave him his time in the spotlight, and I hope it helps other people realize it. Maybe the movies weren't great, but Andrew Garfield's a great actor, and they both had distinct personalities to them that were very separate from Tom Holland's Spider-Man, which was probably the thing I'm most thankful for, is the fact that despite them having a lot of similarities, they were all Peter Parker in their own way. And that is something that I am extremely thankful for. You have the more weirder, quirky, more emotional Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, which I am glad that they kept in from the movies as well. But then you have the more chill, polite, almost more reserved Tobey Maguire one. And then you just have Tom Holland, who's
extremely confident.
Exactly, the confident goofball Spider-Man. They have such a nice blend between the three of them, and I think they executed it very well.
Yeah, because I have to agree, because I think what you posed about how some people might not like that it went from Aunt May's death to such a hyped moment, I liked that they then, after the introduction and the excitement of all of them, we kind of went back to that emotional state when, Tom Holland and is still upset and is getting hugged by, MJ and Ned. But then Andrew and Toby come and they start talking about how important it is to deal with your pain in the right way and not, like Andrew especially. I thought he had such a great kind of story about Gwen Stacy and how he took out his anger. And this was another plot point. I know it's another plot point that was really a plot hole, more of a plot hole than anything. Because he goes, after Gwen Stacy died, he was angry at everybody. And I'm like, but Electro came back when he died. So I was a little confused at the timeline there. Like, I think I understand that, yeah, sure, Electro died and then Spider-Man, because they both, Tobey and Andrew, lived. Maybe there was a bit more there. But obviously, because Tobey looked like he had aged quite a bit since Spider-Man 3. But I don't know. I think that was just a little bit confusing. I think a couple more rewatches and I'll be like, gotcha. But yeah, I liked that all three Spider-Men kind of came together, and Tobey had Aunt May and Andrew had Gwen, and Tobey had Uncle Ben. Yeah, I think I said that right. Yeah, Tobey had Uncle Ben, Andrew had Gwen Stacy, and Tom Holland had Aunt May. And they could all come back and they could all relate, because all of them had an Aunt May and all of them had a Uncle Ben, but they also had a Mary Jane Watson, a Michelle Jones Watson, and Gwen Stacy. So they all had those three people in common, even though they weren't the same people. And I think that that's what really solidified that scene, as in like, all right, well, even though we can't work together because we don't know how, and Tom was really the only one who knew how to work as a team because of the Avengers, who we thought were a band for a little bit there, which was really good joke by Andrew and Tobey. But I think that, yeah, I thought that was a really nice kind of, not relaxing scene, but it was kind of a more reserved scene and a more underappreciated scene than most people go, oh yeah, the final fight was fantastic. I'm like, I look at that scene and go, that's what I wanted. And then leading into the final fight as well, I just think it was everything I could have possibly wanted out of a Spider-Man fight with more than one Spider-Man. So yeah, I think I loved that. Leading on from that scene, and then them all just talking while they're waiting for all the villains to arrive, with Electro and Sandman and Lizard and everybody kind of turning on Tobey and Andrew and Tom. And then they have their all little quotes and their all little quips and their kind of, lines that, remind you of the 5 previous movies that we've seen before, not including Tom Holland's, of course, just the 5 that we've seen before that. This feels like a continuation of each of their arcs. It continues Tom Holland's, it continues the Amazing Spider-Man 2 in a way, and it also kind of continues Spider-Man 3. And I feel like that's what really summed up such a great arc for Tom Holland, and that's for Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And that's kind of why I don't want an Amazing Spider-Man 3, and why I think I'm so content with not wanting that or Spider-Man 4 for Tobey. I think I'm kind of content in that idea of not getting those 2 movies and not continuing them as Spider-Man. So I think, I don't know. So what did you guys think? Basically everything, including Tobey and Andrew, basically until they disappear before Doctor Strange does his last spell. It's a lot to talk about, so you're probably going to talk about for a little bit. But yeah, Nick, go for it, man. What did you think of that whole kind of hour of having Andrew, Tobey, and Tom?
First of all, I want to apologize for the big drop in mic quality if I sound different, which I probably do, but
no, you sound fine, dude.
One of my problems with the movie is that the score, it was a good score, but I think there was some missed opportunities, like having Tobey's theme or even Andrew's theme. But one epic scene was when all 3 of them start swinging to the final battle.
Oh,
I think one missed opportunity there was to have they were playing Tom's theme, so I think a missed opportunity was to play like the Spider-Man theme, like what they did in the Homecoming opening logo, like the classic Spider-Man theme, just with a much more epic, just with a much more epic version, just to say like, oh yeah, all 3 of these are Spider-Man. But it was still good scene. And when all 3 of them are jumping at the Electro, Sandman, and Lizard, it's a great shot, but I had my eyes glued on Andrew kicking Lizard, because that was from the trailer. I was like, oh yeah, they could have. Oh man, it was a great scene. But like I actually agree with you that I don't want Amazing Spider-Man 3 or Spider-Man 4, because we've now given them like a good ending in a really great movie, and I don't want them to risk possibly messing that up. So it was great to see them though, and I think they handled their arcs and their dialogue and interactions very, very, very well.
Yeah. And so yeah, Addy, what was your take on kind of how Andrew and Toby were used in the movie, and then how they kind of wrapped them up?
I feel like a fate worse than them not showing up at all would be a cameo. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad
Oh.
it would be a cameo. Because if it's just like, I'm here and I'm gonna dip, that's lame, right? I'm so glad that they're actually characters. First of all, Tobey Maguire is great. Andrew Garfield's great. They're all great. I don't know why I'm even stating that. They're all great. The final battle was excellent. And this is gonna be weird to say, but that would be like an awesome Lego set. Like, could you just think of that?
It'd
That
be
would be an
such a
awesome
cool
Lego
Lego
set.
set. Yeah, and then
Like-
have
like
like
a
Andrew
half-
and
like-
Toby and Tom.
Built like a
The Statue
like a
of Liberty
half-built
with the
Statue of
Captain America.
Liberty. And then we get like the 3 figures, because I don't think we have like an Andrew Garfield Hulk figure. We have a
Because like, why did what really surprised me? Sorry, Addy, was that why does the Statue of Liberty need Captain America's shield with it?
that was
Like,
so,
what?
I really didn't get that.
I didn't
Could you
get that at
imagine-
all.
Could you imagine something like that happening now? Like,
Yeah, what?
No, that would
get
be
it.
like graffiti or something.
thought that
would
was
be
so-
like a
I
whole
thought
movie.
It's an
was-
excuse for scaffolding so that the final battle looks cool and they can actually stand on things.
Yeah, true. But I was
Yeah.
just like, why would New York City want to put a Captain America shield with bloody?
Yeah,
What's it called?
New York
Yeah.
City. They're not Captain America isn't New York, whatever. All right, but so yeah, Tobey Maguire, I think they were well used as characters. And I think developing on that one thing about Aunt May, I liked how they went from a scene that's sad to a scene that's hype, and then the scene with them talking, which is a mixture of both. And that was well done. What else? It's great seeing Tobey Maguire reconnect with Doc Ock again. and
Yeah, that
vice
was
versa
cool.
Vice versa with Andrew Garfield and Electro and everything. And the line, "I thought you were black," that's funny. And obviously, thing at Miles, which is going to be great.
Yeah,
If
I
that
thought
happens.
that was a tease from Miles. That's why people got so excited.
Yeah, and I really liked how they used him because I'm just glad they weren't cameos. The scene at the science lab, that was hilarious. Ned is so funny, like with this whole thing about how I'm not gonna kill you as a best friend, which is like something I
Yeah,
didn't
because of
notice.
Hobgoblin. Yeah.
Yeah, all of their best friends are always trying to kill him. Like that's low
That's so true. Yeah. It was nice to
leave him
like when they're
alone.
all talking about their web shoot, he's like, is that coming out of you? Like, is that
yeah.
and it's like, how did you do that? Like, I thought that was comedy gold.
I'm so glad they touched on that because how could you not mention that?
Yeah, exactly.
This doesn't make. Where is the hole in Tobey Maguire's suit that is so intricately woven so that the actual thing can come out of his wrist?
Yes.
Like, that's a bit.
It feels very skin tight kind of suit. So
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yes, Nick. Sorry. did
Just
see
one
it.
final thing I wanted to say. I love how the tone of Andrew when he's like basically apologizing to Electro for being white.
Yeah, that was
the
hilarious. He's
tone
like,
he does, like,
he's like, I
I
thought you were
love it. He's
black.
like, man, I'm
so
sorry. And it's
I'm
like,
so sorry.
it's just so well done. The comedy of all three of them is just, it's perfect.
Dude, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I think that whole last hour was really cool. And Mateo, what did you think of everything with Andrew and Toby? What were your thoughts?
I don't know what you guys might have said before. I may or may not have snuck out to get a plate of lasagna, but
No
I do
worries.
have my thoughts on this entire thing, and it mostly revolves around that scene immediately after. Because, like, again, as Aditya already mentioned, I did hear that. Like, you go from bang, saddest scene in the movie, bang, hyper scene in the movie, to bang, Peter Parker on a rooftop, and seeing, like, obviously that moment of emotional vulnerability. Like, we've seen Tom Holland's Spider-Man, like, in moments of emotional vulnerability, and he's typically made his worst decisions in those moments, like giving a certain pair of glasses to a certain man in a green suit. But like seeing both of the other Spider-Men like come in and also just kind of like acknowledge that it is kind of like the shared Spider-Man tradition of power and responsibility, it makes the message, I feel, even more relatable than it typically is, because like that's like Spider-Man's biggest pull. Like he's the relatable hero. You know what I mean? Like he has, apart from the problems of being a superhero, he also has the problems of you and me and like a lot of teenagers. But like seeing the other Spider-Man come in and say like, hey, you're not alone in this, we got you. It's almost like a continuation on that message, to the fact where it's like, since so many people are like that, like there's going to be other people who have your experiences. So like, you know, we can all help each other out. And it's a very wholesome like kind of implication on, and a very wholesome take on power and responsibility. In terms of the actual fight, like I one like hold on to what I said though, because after the final fight, I have one other thing that I want to mention with that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
anyway, about the final fight itself, like, yeah, it was hype. Like they were fighting on the middle of a massive scaffolding with the Statue of Liberty. I really like how they foreshadowed throughout the movie that they were planning on like putting the Cap America shield onto the Statue of Liberty. Like they mentioned it in a bunch of news broadcasts in the background. Like you heard it. It was like, it's like one of those like really stupid subtle things that movies do, where it's like there's a big event happening. There's a big event happening. You like hear about it in the background, and they cut it out to the main movie, and then it turns out that big event was connected to the movie all along.
Wow, I need to rewatch it again just to find that.
I swear they mentioned the Captain America shield on the Statue of Liberty at some point, but I remember hearing it and then seeing it up there, and I was like, oh. But yeah, like it was a hype scenario for a hype battle. Like again, especially when you have like Electro with his new teleportation power, which was a sick thing, by the way.
You know,
really
he teleported in.
Yeah, did he teleport in Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, because he used the electricity to teleport.
I don't remember that, but like
even if you watch like the final hour of the movie, you'll see that he like jumps from like different. It's like, you know, do you remember that shot where in Amazing Spider-Man 2 he swings like past as Electro is like shooting him with like electricity? And it's like slow-mo. Yeah, you can see him like come really close to Spider-Man, then he jump back really like with just the electricity. So
my memory of that movie is very faulty. Like it's the one I remember the least. But like the teleportation thing was sick. I thought it was a very good use of like the environment that they were using. Like it was just a good environment for like the three, because like you can basically take out Norman from that fight. It was a 3v3 essentially, but the three they chose for that fight were a very good three. Yeah. And like even having Doc Ock come in as like a quote unquote fourth, like it's a very hype setup. Getting them all to work together was very funny, but like also pretty cool. Like it was just this kind of like, that's the reason you came to see the movie. You came to see them fight together against like a slew of their villains. Like that was very well done. And like Doc Ock, again, they didn't do the coward's route of turning him evil again, and then they have to save him twice. Now he's a good guy now. That's a thing you have to accept. That was very nice. I love that. And then just seeing the ending of it where they were like talking to their villains, and it's like just wholesome, you know?
Yeah.
Just absolutely exactly what everyone wanted from that. Kieran, I just have to ask, when we're talking about all of this before Strange cast a spell, are we talking about the fight on the like the final fight, Parker
Goblin part
versus Gobby? Are we talking about that?
Yeah. I was about to mention that. So yeah, I was gonna just after you finished, I was gonna mention that. So yes, you can start off that conversation then, and then I'll talk about then Nick and you can talk about it too.
So the fight on the Statue of Liberty shield, water thingamabobby, Green Goblin coming in, missing out all the fun, and then just absolutely getting decked by Spider-Man.
He freaking got beaten up. He got his ass fucking whooped. It was like, bam.
It felt good to see, obviously, after like he did the same thing to Spider-Man like an hour ago. So it's obviously like, go hero. But that's kind of like one of the biggest problems I had with the movie was that fight existing, which kind of sucks to say. But it's like, obviously, Peter Parker is pissed at the guy who killed Aunt May, just as he was pissed at the guy who killed Uncle Ben in all of the other movies. That's the Spider-Man thing. He gets pissed at the person who kills. And honestly, if you were in that kind of position, you'd be pissed as well. But the thing is, for me, the way that it was structured, where we went from Peter Parker has the billboard scene, Peter Parker has the rooftop scene, Peter Parker immediately starts interacting and having and kind of goofing off with all of these other villains. But like
then he's suddenly filled with rage.
Spider-Man's, and it's suddenly filled with rage. Like the thing is, like there wasn't much set up to the like about like him still holding that kind of rage. And the final, it's kind of like this feeling of whiplash where they go from like, haha, goofy fun hours with the Spider-Man, this is what you came to see, to, oh, by the way, we also want to tell the story about Peter Parker. And it almost feels like they sacrificed a little bit of good writing in that regard for the
That's
sake
actually
of that
true.
kind of
Now
like,
that I see that, yeah.
it's not like a slight against the movie.
No,
but it's kind of like,
I get what your point of view is, yeah. Because
it's
I
like,
love that scene.
Yeah, it's more of like, if it's like the guys who are making the movie going like, this is what the fans want, we kind of have to sacrifice a bit of our own movie to give that kind of fan service, whether you think that's a good thing or not. That's like, for me personally, I still really enjoyed the fight, like all of that fun, like all of the ending. Like I it doesn't mean that I suddenly hate this movie.
No,
0 out of 10, unsubscribe, never seeing this again. But like,
yeah,
when like seeing it for the first time, just kind of going from like, this is the moment the fans wanted, now back to our story. For me, I was kind of just like, you couldn't have at least like made him like a little bit more aggressive when he was fighting the villains. And, you know, they had that moment where they're like, oh, we've never worked as a team before. Maybe during that moment, we could also address the fact that Tom Holland is fighting really aggressively. It's like, yo, we're Spider-Man. We don't fight to kill. We fight to be cool. And then they get like, do their teamwork thing. Like, it's just a simple change like that. And that would have like immediately
it would have made it
obvious
better.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, the only reason I adored that scene so much, even though now that you've explained that, that kind of changes my point of view of that scene. I thought that was actually very smart. So thank you, Mateo. Your debating powers have, washed over me. But I think the reason that I think that scene stayed in my mind so much was how incredible Green Goblin coped with being beaten by by Tom Holland, and how aggressive Tom Holland was. And I really think that was kind of a step that I don't think I've seen from the MCU, at least. It just felt like it kept going and kept getting violent. It felt like Robert Pattinson in that Batman trailer where he's just beating up that one goon. That felt like the MCU's version of that. But also, I think I appreciated Green Goblin, Willem Dafoe's performance a lot more in that scene, because he's laughing, and there was one shot that you see very briefly, like you see a really quick punch, and then you see him like smiling like a goblin and like laughing, and then suddenly he gets hit again. So it's a very brief moment. But I remember for that brief moment, I was actually terrified of Green Goblin. And I think what really got me convinced is that, sure, he was taking that beating, and then just as he's about to be stabbed by his own glider by Tom, Peter steps in. But what further enforces that to me is that Goblin still took the opportunity to stab Toby in the back. And I thought that like, sure, it didn't kill him, it would just injured him, I hope. And that's what I'm just gonna, that's my interpretation of the ending there. But I thought that was really cool. And I thought that really gave Goblin the ending that we wanted for him. And it was really showed that he was evil, and then he transformed back into Norman and was suddenly confused. What the hell have I done? And he'd killed Aunt May, he'd stabbed Toby, he'd done all this evil stuff, and he doesn't remember any of it. And I think that that's not a redeeming quality for his character, but I think that it's not like that whole confusion was for no reason. It's legitimately a part of his character. And I think that was also shown in the alley scene very early on in the movie when he smashed his mask, because he was sick of that voice, the goblin voice in his head. So he's like, if I get rid of this mask, it's gone. But it wasn't. And he doesn't remember that. So I think that having that scene at the very end kind of wrapped up his arc better than it kind of wrapped up Tom's arc, if that makes more sense, for that movie at least. So yeah, Nick, what did you think of that kind of gobby fight kind of thing at the end there? It's a very good opinion. Maybe we'll go to Addy. Addy, what did you think of the Goblin?
Sorry, my mic was muted.
Oh,
I was saying
yeah.
it's what I wanted to see the most from Tom Spidey, was just him beating the crap out of someone. And I get what Mateo meant by like him having like this serious conversation about loss with the other two Spider-Man, then going to goofing off, then immediately being filled with rage. But it was still good to see him just be rageful. And I like you said, I love how in that scene where he's punching the crap out of Goblin, and he's just like he's not. It's like he's not taking any hits. He's just smiling at him like that. Really brought out Willem Dafoe's scariness of being Green Goblin, and that was a great scene to watch. And I just want to say, when Toby was stabbed, like I almost had a heart attack. I was like, no, don't tell me they're gonna do it. But then it's like, oh yeah, I've been stabbed before. So that was like, I think that was a smart line of dialogue, because it's like, yeah, it's been stabbed before. But yeah, that's about all I have to say.
That's good. And then Addie, what do you think of that kind of last bit there?
I thought the Goblin fight, like many of the things in this film, really well done. Also, I should say this right before I say anything else, because otherwise I'm going to forget. I do feel like the final hour of the film was far superior to the first.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously Andrew and Toby showed up, but also I feel story-wise, on a story basis, the whole premise of the first about hour, besides the part of showing, his life after, it's just kind of like capture these villains and it'll be nostalgia. All right, back to the Goblin thing. But yeah, no, I thought the Goblin fight was well done, because I think there's this thing I saw in one of the Spider-Man comics where Kingpin, he does something to Aunt May. I don't know if he kills her or not, but he does something bad, right? And you see Peter essentially dissolve into just pure evil. He almost leaves Kingpin within like two seconds to death, right? And then you realize that this dude's like way strong. He's incredibly strong. And then that theme is then exemplified in this final fight. And I feel like he forgets just everything that he's been told, which I think is a bit whack. But I feel like then when Toby comes in, because we got to keep in mind, Toby, he's not Uncle Ben. He's still trying. He's still Spider-Man. So that's why it didn't work on the first attempt, I think. And that's why that reinforcement from both of them, Andrew and Toby, is what really pushes him and to realize that he can't kill this guy. He could, but he shouldn't. And that's the difference. The could and the shouldn't. And that's why the final battle is so good. I think it is a bit weird that just like he's just kind of like sitting there contemplating what he's done for like 10 minutes while everything else is going on, like literally world erasing stuff, and then you just see Norman in the corner, just like for 10 minutes. It's fine. But like, what else are you gonna do with him? And I thought they just essentially, for what is of late the final Spider-Man film, they take back what was the first Spider-Man film and put that final battle and then crank it to 11. And I think that was good.
Don't worry, ma'am! I'm coming!
We're gonna move on. So this is the ending of the film, and we've gotten to like the last 10 minutes of the movie, and it kind of brought me back to the feel of Homecoming and Far From Home again. It's more focused on, now that we don't have Toby, we don't have Andrew, they're all gone, all the villains are gone. There's still something wrong. We still have that second spell, and Doctor Strange comes back during that final fight at some point. Also, I just really want to quickly mention, I really liked how Andrew saved Zendaya from falling in the scaffolding. I thought that was a great kind of full circle thing. And my mum, who's only seen Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Homecoming and Far From Home, she loved that scene because, she knew Amazing Spider-Man 2 so well. So I thought that was a really cool scene. I think all of us would agree that that was a really cool thing for him to save Zendaya instead of Tom. So I thought I'd just quickly mention that on behalf of all of us. But I think the ending with the spell, Doctor Strange casts a spell knowing that no one will remember Peter Parker is Spider-Man at all. And it's not like a certain thing where you can just go in the next movie and go, oh yeah, here I am, I'm Peter Parker. They don't know who Peter Parker is. Ned doesn't know, MJ doesn't know, Happy doesn't know, Aunt May's dead, and Doctor Strange won't know. So it feels like finally, this is everything, even though it's a very problematic thing, and knowing that he has a second trilogy to continue this story on, I thought it kept it wide open for what they could do for what the next 3 movies or whatever, how many movies he's going to be in. I think it's really going to affect his future as Spider-Man. And even though and then he gets a new suit and it's like authentic, like original blue and red suit. And I think it's incredible. And I loved that. But I thought that suit looked so cool in the snow and it just looked really nice. And I think that really solidified to me that 40-second suit reveal, he's Spider-Man. Tom Holland is no longer somebody that has to answer to anybody else. He is his own Spider-Man, like Toby and Andrew already were, and cannot have to worry about the implications of worrying if a loved one was connected to him. But I feel like that leaves a whole new trilogy to explore so much more. In obviously, hopefully they go down the path of getting Zendaya, and I keep saying Zendaya instead of MJ, but MJ and Ned back at least, and then convincing, I think Spider-Man might not possibly come back to the Avengers. I genuinely think that. And I think for some reason, I'm happy about that because I want him to be his kind of independent character, like Daredevil. And I think that because Daredevil and Spider-Man didn't know each other very well, I'd really love the Spider-Man trilogy to kind of be a Daredevil trilogy as well. So it's kind of Spider-Man and Daredevil against all these threats that potentially could happen in the MCU in the future. So I think that's really where I would rather the ending to go. Because we've gone over time, but that's okay. We'll keep going just to quickly finish off these last couple of things. So the ending with the spell and the new suit. I also wanted to mention the first post-credit scene, which is with Eddie Brock. If you've seen Venom 2, you'd have known he got transported to the MCU and Venom recognized Peter Parker for some reason. That's a problem with Venom 2. I'm not worrying about that for No Way Home. But then Eddie Brock is trying to wrap his head over what the hell happened in the MCU in the last 5 years. So he's talking about Thanos. He's talking about Mysterio. He's talking about all this stuff to this bartender. And I'm like, what the hell is this kind of post-credit scene? It's ridiculously terrible. And then Venom's like, no, I know this 18,000 multiverse stuff or whatever he's talking about. There's something he says. I need to rewatch it. But I was just like, oh, it really disappointed me. And then suddenly he gets sent back. And I'm like, what a waste of a post-credit scene. But then Venom's left something behind, and it's the piece of the symbiote. And then it latches out as it cuts out. I'm like, okay, I understand where you were going there, but you spent way too long on Eddie Brock just talking about him familiarizing himself with the MCU when it probably won't have any implications on Venom 3. Apart from, and it might have implications on Spider-Man, Tom Holland's in the future with that symbiote. So yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. And then obviously, lastly, the final post-credit scene, it's not really a post-credit scene. And I liked that it wasn't. It was actually the Doctor Strange 2 trailer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And I didn't really pay too much attention because I was kind of shocked by how different the multiverse was compared to how it was literally just portrayed in No Way Home. So it's all darker. It's a lot, grittier than what we just seen in No Way Home. And I think that having Wanda and Doctor Strange together would be so cool to see. And having Sam Raimi direct that after directing, incredible horror films and also the Spider-Man movies so well, I think it could end up being really good. And I actually kind of think that Wanda might end up being the villain in this movie at points. And that's kind of my theory from what I saw from the Doctor Strange 2 trailer. So basically, guys, you're going to have to wrap up the ending with the spell and the new suit and the symbiote post-credit scene and the Doctor Strange 2 trailer in this last bit. So feel free to talk for as long as you need to. So Nick, what did you think of that whole kind of final half hour of content? You might be muted again, dude.
Yeah, but I love the ending. It really shows that now Tom Holland has fully become his own Spider-Man without relying on any technology. And I thought it was a very mature choice of him to be like, okay, I can't remind them, I can't put these people in danger. And I'm actually very curious to see as to where they go with the story. I love the new suit. I can't wait to see it clearly in the next movie. With the post-credit scene, like you said, when he started to vanish, I was actually really furious. Like, why would you waste that opportunity? And I'm like, okay, yeah, symbiote. I mean, hopefully we get a better, if we do get an Eddie Brock, hopefully we get a better Eddie Brock than Tom Hardy. But just on a quick note about that.
I think what the symbiote was trying to mean was the reason that was left behind is that it's going to eventually find its way to Spider-Man. So I feel like they're going to do the Spider-Man 3 arc again.
That'd be
good. But in the MCU. So
what you said before about how it's weird how Venom gets transported to the MCU. I read or heard something, I forgot about a theory about that, and it's how in the Venom 2 post-credit scene, there's a line where he's like, I think it's about like hive knowledge across universes and symbiotes.
Oh, okay.
So I'm assuming that the knowledge of all these symbiotes can like kind of be passed on or be connected. And so Spider-Man 3's symbiote knowledge can be found in Tom Hardy's Venom. And that's how like Venom got transported to the MCU. I don't know. It's just an idea.
Yeah.
But
interesting.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see what they do next. And the Doctor Strange 2 trailer was really good. I can't wait for Sam Raimi to. I'm happy Sam Raimi is going back to Marvel, and I'm hoping it's very scary.
I hope it's a horror film because I've heard a lot of rumors that it's a horror film.
Yeah, I think it was confirmed it was a horror film, but I'm hoping that it's
the
more of a
reshoots
horror
don't
film
change
that
it.
I would. I'm hoping it's more of a horror film than I expect it to be. Like I'm talking about full horror and not just horror elements.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah. Addie, what did you think of the final kind of ending of the movie and then symbiote and then Doctor Strange 2?
Okay. I thought the
It's
ending
a lot to
was...
unpack.
Okay. First, the ending. Ending was interesting. I didn't really think they were actually going to go through with that because I thought Marvel was gonna. I thought the MCU was just gonna be bit of a wuss about it. I thought they'd just like find a way to get out of it. Like, we're just joking. You really thought that we'd lose all that money? And they do that, and then he made a mature choice, and I like the new suit. We barely saw it, but I like the direction they're going with. But the idea that everything, all evidence of Peter essentially is gone, and that no one knows him is gonna be hard to. I think it's gonna be hard to manifest into the new trilogy because, like, I've always found that something about Peter Parker, besides always experiencing consequences and the fact that he can never have both things, they kind of just got rid of the Peter Parker aspect of it. And while I do think that's going to be interesting to see, I think to a certain extent it could also be problematic because, but again, if he has no one to worry about, he can do anything
Whatever he
wants.
Mm.
Exactly. So hypothetically, this is the same Peter Parker. He could kill people, but I don't think he will. I'm almost 100% sure he won't. First of all, it's Disney and Sony, but whatever. But the point is,
Sony, Marvel, Disney, all of them.
It's all of that. It's going to be interesting to see. I think it's going to be hard to, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think the first movie in this new trilogy is going to be as good as this one or great or anything.
I don't think any MCU movie will top this one, to be honest. That's my opinion. It's going to be very hard to do.
Because I was actually more hyped for this movie than Endgame. And also, the Endgame final battle was fine, to be honest. This final battle...
I actually agree. I think that No Way Home's better than Endgame.
Yeah, because the Endgame final battle just kind of felt like pointless. Like, it felt kind of like fan service. And don't get me wrong, this movie is pretty much 50%, 80% fan service.
Fan service and nostalgia.
It had a point. It had a point, and that was good. All right. Ending. Yeah, that's completed. What was the next thing? First post-credit scene. Yeah, symbiote. First post-credit scene. I actually think I like Tom Hardy as Venom, to be honest. The post-credit scene was fine. The guy who plays the bartender is the same guy who played this guy called Danny Trejo in Ted Lasso. So I was just happy to see him.
Really?
And, yeah, he plays this guy in Ted Lasso, and he's
That's
like
hilarious.
this really outgoing, happy soccer player and stuff. To see him play this guy, low key, I want to see that symbiote latch onto that guy. Just like really, that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But Yeah, that was fine, I guess. Bit wacky story-wise and multiverse-wise, but again, we don't know anything about the multiverse besides the hundreds of movies. Anyway, not hundreds, but you get my point.
I know what you mean.
Holland and whatnot. Okay,
Mhm.
the second one, Multiverse of Madness. I'm glad that it's getting directed by Sam Raimi because Sam Raimi is actually an awesome director. And I think something that was really good about this film was it doesn't feel like it was directed by Jon Watts. What they were
didn't.
going for, it kind of, because like the first two Spider-Man movies directed by Jon Watts kind of felt like high school movies. This one leaves that because high school has always been an aspect of Peter Parker that we see in the previous films. That was the entire thing. Felt like the Breakfast Club, but that one guy's got spider powers now, right? And it was cool to see that a kind of departure from that because they had like Sam Raimi direction aspects to it, Mark Waid aspects to it. They basically had aspects that all the directors would have, like certain things. Like for example, the Sam Raimi movies would have almost like horror elements to them. It would be very campy, but it would still be kind of horror. Like in the original, the first Spider-Man movie, like when like a Spider that lady and then just turns her as freaking Goblin in a massive
in
so
like a cloth kind of thing, like a
That's so it's low-key scary, but it's also hilarious. And I feel like elements of that were in this film. And that's good to see. And the way they did the Spidey sense was similar to how they did it, how they directed it, by moving the camera in but zooming out, so it gives that weird effect. And that was cool. Multiverse of Madness. Forgot to talk about that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Movie trailers, they don't really get me super excited. The trailer it was fine. It was fine, I guess, as a trailer. As far as trailer goes, it was fine.
It was a good teaser, I think, more than a trailer. It felt more like it didn't give any story arc away. It was kind of just like, well, Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch are going to be fighting together. So,
because I feel like the character of Doctor Strange in the MCU was so weird because I thought he was going to be serious, which would have helped for his character. But then when they made a standalone Doctor Strange movie to introduce us to the characters so we can get prepared for Infinity War and Endgame, they were like, all right, well, this is an MCU Marvel movie, so we got to make him a bit funny. Otherwise, who's he going to talk off of? So they made him kind of a funny character or sarcastic, but then they have to change that for Infinity War. Then they changed it again in Endgame. And now in this movie, he's like kind of in it, but barely. And you don't really know what his character is. So I want to see what they're going to do with the character. And yeah, I think it'll be like everything that's going to come out of this movie, it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, how it goes. Yeah, Nick, what were you going to say? Just sorry, Mateo. What's up?
That's right. Just one final thing I was really, really, really hoping for that we didn't get was that when Peter opens the door to his apartment, I was praying, I was really hoping that I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Mr. Dickovich would just walk by and be like, rent.
Even though it would have made no sense in the movie, I was kind of
he could have just came by and be like, every month you owe me rent, and then walk away. Like just that would have been the cherry on top. But yeah. I still love the ending.
Before we get to Mateo's point of view on like the whole last 30 minutes of the movie, I want to say that I think even though the Venom symbiote thing was kind of cool and, it finished off what Venom 2 was kind of setting up, I really kind of hoped for a little bit of even just a tease, like either Daredevil will return or or a teaser for like Daredevil season 4. That's what I was kind of hoping for and was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Or even like when Electro was joking about Spider-Man possibly being black, I was like, damn, there might be a post-credit scene teasing Miles. And I think, yeah, I know that'll eventually happen probably in the MCU. Like we'd be kidding ourselves if Miles Morales and Daredevil didn't get a bigger role in the future of the MCU. But yeah, I don't know. That was kind of what I was expecting, but I'm happy with what we got. So yeah, Mateo, what did you think of the ending and the 2 post-credit things?
This is the part where I'm the boring one and get to say sad stuff, because I'm gonna be real about the ending. It was kind of almost predictable because just because of the simple fact that it's like, where do we go from here? We've gotten our big like fight. We've gotten everything that we could have ever wanted as fans, right? But in terms of the actual story itself, because like, again, like I mentioned before, they were trying to juggle both fan service and telling the story that they wanted to tell with Peter Parker, like concluding Tom Holland's arc. They're juggling both of these things, and they finished with the fan service, so they can put that down. But now they still have to find a way to like stick the landing with the other part. And like the only feasible solution for me, it seemed like they were gonna press the big old reset button. But
I think I predicted it too. I was like, oh, I see this coming.
Like, I'm happy that they gave it the time it needed, because like, if any, again, like going back to like, haha, relatable Spider-Man, if anyone was put into that position where, and essentially for the greatest of goods, like, you know, the salvation of your universe and all of that, to make sure the multiverse keeps functioning as it does, you have to give up your life, like not your like ability to live, but like your actual life. Like, that's a massive trade-off, and I'm glad they gave it the weight and severity it deserved. It was just a bit, again, taken away by the fact that like, even though it was like kind of the whole bait and switch that like at the start you think it happens and then it doesn't, and then it ends up happening anyway, it's like the only like it's kind of removed from the fact that just because it's been a thing throughout the entire movie. But I'm glad they did give it in from a writing point, they gave it the weight and like severity it deserved. The scenes before like they go bye-bye for the last time, like that was really well done. Cool. And the cafe scene especially, like that was probably my second favorite film, that moment in the entire movie, just because like he has the choice to like be selfish, and
he did
it. A younger Peter Parker might have done that, but he didn't, because this is an old, grizzled veteran Peter Parker now.
Mature.
But, like, yeah, like he had the whole like little speech written out. He was gonna do it like it was gonna be another dorky, happy MCU moment, and I think we would have all been really happy if it happened, because it would have been really sweet and wholesome. But seeing him take the mature route and kind of learning that, yeah, the consequences of having responsibility is that you kind of just have to be willing to give stuff up, but also seeing him not totally give up on Spider-Man as a result, it was just a really nice thing to just see happen overall. Like the main point of like this new Spider-Man thing, like there's a lot of practical issues that I think they're going to have with, like, by the way, like this is a person who doesn't exist now, so it's going to be very interesting seeing how they like there's going to be a lot of practical, exactly. But particularly with Parker, like it's just nice to give him that big old reset button, in terms of the fact that it's like they've completely shaped the paradigm, which means that he can get a new trilogy like that. And one of the things I was going to say though is kind of going off what Aditya said about like, oh, by the way, this is a totally free Spider-Man who doesn't have, like, they separated Spider-Man from his main responsibility, which was his responsibility to Peter Parker. So now he just has responsibilities to the greater good. But this is the kind of responsibility that, I don't know, a certain little droplet of alien symbiote might be able to take advantage of if, you know, it found its way to New York. Like, I don't know. I thought that'd be a really goofy concept in terms of the fact that, like, if you want to continue this, like, if you want to, like, make the post-credit scene from Venom pay off directly to Spider-Man, like, it'd be very interesting seeing the whole Spider-Man Venom relationship in terms of like him getting the black suit and all that, whatever, with a Spider-Man who does it, like, because the main gimmick of that is like, oh no, I'm becoming a bad Spider-Man and that's starting to affect my personal life, and it's just this whole negative cycle of my personal life affecting Spider-Man. But if you remove the personal life angle and it's just Spider-Man versus what the right thing to do is, and like the internal conflict is essentially settled on him trying to make a life for himself whilst also grappling with increased responsibilities because now no one knows who he is, so he has to be Spider-Man hard. I don't know, there's like so many different potential routes they could go with this, and I'm very excited to like see where it leads. That's also basically my opinion on the Venom post-credits, by the way. Like, I personally really enjoy Tom Hardy as Venom. I don't really like the movies, I just like him acting as Venom.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing as Andrew Garfield in the Amazing Spider-Man films. Like, Andrew's great in them, and Andrew's a great actor. Tom Hardy's a great actor, but the Venom films suck. So, you know, so I see where you're going with that. Like, I thought it was really funny.
The only other note I have on that is, you know, remember the scene back in the apartment where like the spider sense starts kicking in and like, what's gonna happen, someone's about to go villain. I low-key thought that's when they were going to introduce Venom. Because like I remember in the comics, Venom has the, like, I don't know if you have it here, because like the entire gimmick is because Venom was with the spider suit, like he can mess up Spider-Man's spider sense. So I thought like he was doing some spider sense messing up there. Like I wasn't surprised when the Goblin ended up turning bad, but I was like, what if Venom just like came out of nowhere and started like messing stuff up? That would have been really funny. Cool. But also it would have made no sense, but it would have been fun.
And it would have kind of been like, I think maybe a lot of people complain about how Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as well, they have too many villains. There's such an overabundance of villains and it doesn't feel balanced. And I think that's what No Way Home finally has broken that kind of curse of. They have 5 villains that they have to balance equally, and they did it. like wonderfully. So yeah, I think I think introducing Venom would have made it way too much more complicated, if you know what I mean.
But my Sinister Six.
Well, I
I can't
think
have a Sinister Five.
I think Sony's doing Sinister Six with Morbius and Vulture and Venom that way. I just because Tom Holland, you got to think, not just anybody. I think just everybody needs to know that, you know, Tom Holland is going to be part of the Sony movies, so he's going to be part of the Sony verse of all the villains of Venom and all that. But then again, we saw in the trailer for Morbius, we saw Tobey Maguire, but then we saw, what's it called, Tom Holland, what's it called? We saw Oscorp for Andrew Garfield, and what was the Tom Holland thing again? Oh, Vulture, Michael Keaton as Vulture. So I think that Morbius may be set in some fractured, altered universe. That's my opinion. That's my prediction.
It'd be very interesting.
So yeah, I think Morbius will kind of set the record straight with what is happening. So yeah, I think that'll set things up. But what did you think of the Doctor Strange 2 trailer before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I was about to say, speaking of trailers, I thought that the Doctor Strange trailer was a very good Marvel trailer. Like, in terms of the fact that, like, you kind of gives you the vibe of what's going to happen. It shows you there's going to be things that happen. Unlike the Spider-Man, the No Way Home trailer, like, we're no longer in the Sony Marvel realm. There's not going to be Sony playing all of their cards in the trailer. There's not going to be any Sony limitations on the special effects.
It's going to be Marvel.
Marvel.
Disney and Marvel.
Essentially, basically Disney and Marvel doing Disney and Marvel things. Like, we're going to be back to the MCU real soon. But it was very nice to take this. It's almost like a detour away from the main MCU. It was a very pleasant detour, and it was a very enjoyable and very cool one, because especially it tied up Tom Holland very nicely with a nice little bow on the top. But now we are going back into what the MCU is known for, those massive interconnected webs of movies, those massive, big, universe threats. It's just a reminder that, that's the path they're going down. And now, whether it's a path that may be to tread already after the MCU's prior successes, or whether it's one that they'll be able to find some new life in, remains to be seen. That's why I'm not exactly super hyped for Doctor Strange 2, but we're going to have to see it when we get there, and we'll have to see what happens there.
And I think at that point, I completely agree with that, about how this is kind of a nice detour away from the MCU for a little bit, but then coming straight back. However, because I've been seeing all the Disney Plus shows, as they've released, I felt like that I still have that kind of larger than life MCU still there, while also waiting for Spider-Man No Way Home. And especially since Hawkeye is wrapping up with its finale tonight, I kind of feel like having Hawkeye and Spider-Man debut kind of around the same time, it feels like we've still got that MCU. So I was quite happy with that. But before I wrap things up, has anyone else got anything they want to mention, or do you think we're all good? I think we're good.
This is gonna be pain for you to edit.
What? Yeah. Oh, the actual thing. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
which is why this is going to come a couple of weeks out from when we record this. So yeah. But I think that kind of wraps up our spoiler review. So I just want to thank Addy, Mateo, Nick, all of you for coming. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I had a great time talking about this. I think when I rewatch this next, I think I'm going to have a different opinion. I don't think it's going to vary very much, but I think seeing all of your opinions on it has really kind of made me see this in a bit of a different light. So I really urge you all, please subscribe to Blue Blaze Studios and keep a lookout for Nick's Film Reviews, because that's a channel that's coming out next year. And he's already done...
The channel is out, but...
Your videos, your reviews and stuff, will be coming out in January. And I think it's Scream that you're starting with, the 5th Scream movie. Nice. So keep an eye out on that in January, which is very exciting. So yeah, thank you everybody so much for watching. And if you'd like to check out my non-spoiler review of Spider-Man No Way Home, that is out. So please check it out if you have the time. So this has been Kiers Reviews, signing off for now.
Don't forget to like, follow, and obey.